Us for the final fireside chat of the day. Again, I'm Marty Berman, VP of Sales for North America and LATAM at Admix, and I am so excited to talk with Andrew Goodman and learn a little bit more about how they've been flexing their digital muscle here. Andrew, thanks so much for being here today and sharing your time and insights. Quick intro before we get started about Admix, if you're not familiar with us. Our pioneering platform really bridges the gap between gaming and advertising, driving the in-play movement, which really integrates data-driven ads. It's available programmatically via IAB standard ad sizes. We also do product placements, which are a little bit more in-depth, but really it's about being non-disruptive to the gaming experience. And meaning that ads aren't displayed in the middle of your gaming experience and you cannot close those annoying rewarded videos or disruptive ads. But enough about that. We're here to talk with Andrew. And by
the way, that was a non-disruptive ad.
Thank you. I
well
tried
played,
not to
sir.
be disruptive with it. Tried to be
very well done,
as native as possible. Thank you. Andrew has been at Mattel for about 3 years, but he brings a wealth of entertainment experience. He's worked at Getty Images for a long time and also at the Maui Film Festival, which we didn't get a chance to talk to. We'll have to talk about that over drinks and hear more about that.
My ties, for sure.
So, I think one of the things that really excited me about our conversation is that before 2018, my impression of what Mattel is was traditionally just a toy company. You think of Barbie and all the other toys that Mattel really does. But there's been a lot of changes that have taken place at Mattel since then. Can you talk a little bit about what those changes have been, what led to it, and kind of where you're taking the brand from there?
Yeah, I mean, when by the way, first of all, thank you for having me here, and I'm excited to talk to everybody here. But I mean, basically in 2018 or around that time, Ynon came on as CEO of Mattel, and one of his real priorities was to turn us into an IP-driven organization. Obviously, we have these incredible brands, and like you mentioned, it's not just like any brands. You have these power brands: Barbie, Hot Wheels, Thomas, Fisher-Price, a multitude of others. But I think the goal was to really extend those brands outside of just toy. And I know they were doing a lot of that work already, but I think it was just about putting a focus on it, a finer point. So part of that was hiring a larger, like a Mattel Films division with Robbie and Fred Celia on the Mattel TV side to just kind of like extend the IP outside of kind of traditional toy business. So that's when our department, which had other versions, I guess, in the past of Mattel, kind of this current iteration of franchise marketing kind of was created.
And I think, a little off topic, but not terribly. I was reading somewhere the other day, you guys have 30 films in the, schedule.
I'm trying to remember what's public. Yeah, I mean,
well, I think I read about it, so it was public because it was mentioned in an article. But yeah, I mean, I think it's something like 30 films coming out.
So there's a bunch of films in development, I think that's probably the number you're thinking of. We have a bunch of them also close to and going to be coming out in production and stuff. But I mean, I think the idea is that we have a lot of films in development of our IP. We have a lot of TV shows in development or actively on television or on streaming or wherever TV shows are aired these days. So just a ton of IP from the vault really being developed for content. And that extends into gaming with Andrew Chan and different people over there. And also our YouTube and short form content, and it's just really extending the brand story wherever we can tell it authentically.
And I think that's a great segue in terms of your role. And I think it's important for everybody to understand a little bit more what you do as the director of franchise marketing. So talk to us a little bit about what sort of the scope is and how you work within the existing framework at Mattel and how you take those incredible brands and really leverage them.
Yeah, I mean, so my role is the focus for our little team, me and Emily, is the doll brands that don't include Barbie, our action portfolio, which often is mostly Master of the Universe, which is He-Man, and our games portfolio, which is most often Uno. So we managed a lot of the stuff there, but so depending on the kind of like our kind of internal partner, whether it be the games team, action team, or dolls team, we deal in obviously cross-functional synchronicity and making sure that the short to mid to long-term plans are all kind of in line and that everybody's kind of communicating. And then we drive certain projects along the way, depending on whether that be, working with our partners in the consumer products, the licensed consumer products division, or driving kind of content marketing strategies, or kind of better connecting some of the franchise foundation elements, like building out the franchise Bibles and making sure that the DNA and the framework of everything we're doing across all of these different lines of business really do connect and also, make sense to the consumer, because the consumer doesn't care if it's coming from one division or the other. They just want to make sure it works. And I don't know if you know this, but consumers are very savvy, and they can smell when it's not right. So it's very easy. They know it should be like this all the time. And we make sure that it always feels right. It's foundationally correct, that if we're leading with purpose, we're leading with purpose wherever we go, and everything just like makes sense. And that's what we do.
Fantastic. Cool. And you've worked on some incredible partnerships, which are all unique. Each one is different, but I think as Patrick talked a little bit about working with celebrities, which you have done at Mattel with specific projects, but what have been the three biggest challenges you faced when structuring deals? I know they're never, straightforward or linear, and some start and stop, but what are, when you're putting these deals together for these franchisees, if you could sort of thread through some of the biggest challenges, three of the biggest challenges you faced.
Yeah, I will. And then, by the way, I meant to also say, often what we do is amplify with marketing noise, and by creating collaborations and halo partnerships to make some marketing noise, which is would have been a better transition. I'm sorry, Marty, I let you down.
Oh my God, Andrew.
Yeah. So I think we talked about this last week when we were chatting, that like all deals are hard. Doing deals is hard. And that's often when you want to do deals with other people that also want to do deals. It's just, there's so many things in the way by the time you're done, whether it be legal or product development or finances or time or whatever, lack of momentum. I think we talked about this.
Yeah, we
I know
did.
you wanted me to hit it. Is that like,
save that for the last? That's the last.
I'll save it.
Save that quote. Save that quote.
It's a good one. I'll save it for the end. Three of the hardest ones. I don't know if they're all challenging. I think what's I'll give you an example of one that was a little tricky, but it's not actually tricky. It's just that you want to do. I think in general you just want to do them right. So when there's an incredible artist, so I'm tying two things that you had asked me. One is that what's challenging and what was the most benefit, like what felt the best, right? So there's an artist named Matsaki, who's one of the kind of works with Takashi Murakami in Kaikakiki Gallery in Japan. Incredible artist. I found out he was doing a mural of Masters of the Universe at ComplexCon. So my wife and I went basically to ComplexCon because that's what you do, but also not because of that, because you go because this incredibly talented artist was inspired by a franchise you work on, right? So we went over there, and I think, from meeting him and kind of in connecting with him with our friends at Network, Gaston over there, we decided, we were like, this is an incredible story. And as I was asking him about his relationship to He-Man, he said that, when he lived in Jersey as a young kid, I want to get the story right, but I believe he immigrated to Jersey, and he didn't know English very well. So he watched He-Man, and it helped him with his English. So he has this like really authentic connection to the property. He loves it. I was like, we got to tell this story. We got to figure out how to do it. So it took us maybe a year and a half or so. We're still doing stuff, almost 2 years of like, from kind of a few folks talking around some art, and then turning that into, well, then how do we turn this into a product? Is that the right thing to do? What's the product? How do we tell this story respectfully? So he did some gallery shows in Japan. How do you do it during a pandemic? Because we were going to travel it. We had all, how do you do it around kind of all these different things that get in the way? And I think what we ended up coming out with, which was this beautiful sculpture of He-Man riding Battlecat with Matsaki's sensibilities and obviously creative, it was just so cool to see, and then people reacting to it, right? And then obviously it helps when it sells out. But I think that like the fact that people wrote articles about the authenticity of this connection and how, our brands, and this brand specifically, kind of has no borders, right? Like we make these things to be interpreted and to kind of, they're mirrors. And so that's when you're like, oh, this worked really well.
But it's a challenge.
sort of,
Like you didn't. There's no guarantee that you're going with your gut. Everybody's involved,
yeah,
and everybody's got their best intent, but there's no guarantee that it's going to be a success. So there's a lot of hurdles you have to jump through there.
sure, and they can fall apart at any time. So we've had some that you're working on for a year and then they fall apart. But so that's why I guess I could keep going if you'd like me to keep rattling off success stories, Marty.
I know you have many to pull from.
That's not true at all. But I guess, I mean, so that's an example of like something that's really hard to do, only because like you're dealing with time zones and language and creative points of view, and it's very precious, right? And you want to get it right. So that was hard.
You've got so many different franchises that you're managing, and we'll talk a little bit about how far you've come from when you first started, but like, what's the hardest part about managing you've got so many great franchises and so many different ideas? What's the hardest part of like managing all of that and all the different projects that you're working on from a franchise standpoint?
Well, I have one of the best people ever working with me on it. So Emily Chow, who's like my partner in crime on everything I do, she keeps the trains on time. She really does help. Not just help. She's incredible. And so without her, it couldn't be done. But I think partly is that we have to be able to have this meeting like we're having now, leave the meeting clearly with what we need to do, and then basically go to a completely different meeting next and be able to just quickly transition. Without losing steam, getting confused, getting bogged down, understanding who's driving what and like what needs to happen, so that, because I mean, there are days where you have 10, 12 meetings in a day, and they could be about 10, 12 different projects with 6 to 7 different brands. I mean, it could really be bizarre. So it is hard. You get better at it. But I think in general, it's about really leveraging that time in that meeting for like, hey, here's exactly what we need to get done. Do we have the right people in the room to keep moving things forward? Because will use the quote at the end, but like momentum is everything. I think it's important in deal making, but in cross-functional communication, right? We have to be supportive. We have to be useful. We have to keep moving things forward and keep thinking strategically and just making sure that we're always kind of completing tasks. And so sometimes that blocking and tackling is hard to do, but it's I'm lucky I have an incredible teammate to do it. And by the way, it's not just her. Like, we have cross-functional partners that help us too. So it's everybody along the way is really supportive, because you do none of this stuff alone. I mean, at all. It takes a village.
Yeah, well, you've got your internal resources and cross-functional teams, but then each of those have to work with external teams.
Correct.
And cross-functional teams. So there's a lot to manage in that whole process.
And we always talk about the account management internally and account management externally, right? It's all partner relationships. Other teams can be their partners. I know we're on the same team, but our goals are different. So, and sometimes not our goals, but some of the goals of the people in the room can be different. So our job is to make sure that all the goals line up. And so Emily and I talk about this a lot. And I always give this advice in general about our job. And I'm sorry if I'm ruining your questions, Marty. I'm going out of order.
We're all good.
But it's the idea of like the empathy part, right? Trying to understand what people's needs are, so that you're prepared and respectful of those needs, but also that you're leaving the meeting so that people's needs are met and teams' needs are met. And so your partners' needs are met, so that we're working towards next steps. So we're all moving in the same direction, I think. So I always talk about it in terms of empathy and just like thinking about everyone else. And then obviously driving the larger goal that you have and everyone has to the end.
Yeah, well, listen, actually, that was a perfect segue into my next question. So it couldn't have been any better.
We're going to take this on the road, me and you.
We're going on the road. And because actually what we talked about was how challenging it is. And you touched on a little bit before with Matsaki, and that is the authenticity and it's got to be organic, right? And, we touched on, and I think you talked about a little bit, you talked about empathy and making sure everybody's aligned, but that process, I think the Matsaki, partnership seemed very organic, because it was something you and your wife went to. You saw this, you had personal interest, but then when you're there, it sort of turned into these business opportunities.
Right.
However, that isn't probably always the way it works. And
that's correct. My wife doesn't come with me to every meeting.
No, she doesn't.
No,
she's not a helicopter wife. That's good to know.
she'd be, but it would be good if she was there because I would do better.
Of course, we all would. Yes. Let's be honest.
Anyway, sorry.
That's why they call them the better half.
100%.
But that process, like when you're walking, you're talking to your team internally, you've got a franchise and you want to, there's a desire to do something. How do you determine like who's that best partner and how do you make sure that it's authentic and how far does it take you to get to that? Like where, do you have like 3 or 4 different partners that you're thinking of? And then, because not everybody always aligns with who you're going to reach out to for a partnership. They may be like, nah, I don't think so. Right. So
yeah, I think it depends.
You find that right groove of it being authentic and organic with a partnership.
I think part of it is like, so I think it's obviously you start with that like wish list and then you start, kind of figuring out priorities and who you're going after and stuff. Sometimes you have conversations and you realize that it's a mismatch, right? Like either it's off, like it's just like our priorities off, our timing's off, or just like it's not going to feel right, or it just isn't. It's like they're just not built for us, or we're not built for them. It just happens.
You don't want to force something because then it definitely. I mean that.
No, and we've done it, and we've paid the price. I think everyone's done that, right? Where you're like, but then also you get to a point of no return sometimes, right? Too. So, but I think generally, it's kind of like dating, right? Where you're like, is this right? Like, is this we always talk about story and our products and our partnerships, our collaborations, our content, whatever we're doing, it's all storytelling. And I'm a film major kid, so I always think about story. But if you can find that right story, it really helps. And I think if you need the right story for it to work, because I think you realize really quickly if you don't have the right story, which sometimes you've done stuff, you're like, I think we have the story, and then you realize you don't. But like when you have the right story, you have the right kind of like authentic connection, you can tell that story on social, through product, through content. Like it's not hard.
Yeah, there's just a lot of extensions.
Well, also just like it's natural. Like I want to tell it this way. I'm going to tell it this way. It's great. It's like so fun. The other stuff, it can feel a little. It doesn't work. And then I think that like lack of spark, you can see it sometimes. And so we're always just like, even if we did okay, we're like, oh, we got it. We're 80% of what we could have done. We got to get that story better, or we got to get that story cleaner, or it was too complicated. It was just too muddy. We need to have a clearer call to action. We need to have a clear connection. And I think we're always doing that. I think everyone does that, right? Where they're just like, you're constantly checking in because these things are really hard to do. And, and we're also manufacturing product a lot, which is not like a normal partnership. Like I'm not saying anything wrong with this, but like we're not signing anybody up for a sponsorship. Right. Like we have to make stuff.
Like Emily's like involved.
Emily's like making stuff, you know what I mean? Like, and I mean, and I help her, but like that's hard. And there's teams like, Julia, Kyle on the creative team and Yana, like it's hard to make stuff. Like, and Yana and these guys have to put up with us, like having all these ideas, and they have to take it and they have to like turn it into something. And it's hard to do all this stuff. It's hard dealing with us. It's hard with the excitement. It's hard to boil it down to a concept and how to like pay for it. It's all of it's hard. So when you do it, it's like it's really exciting when it works. I'll give you a quick example of like when it works and a good story. For those that know me, know that I like the world of wrestling, pro wrestling and some of the WWE stuff. And there was a group called Up Up Down Down. Well, there is a group called Up Up Down Down, but there was a group called The Party, which was a group of 4 wrestlers who were, because of COVID, playing Uno every week on their YouTube channel. This guy Craig oversees this Up Up Down Down channel, and through a series of I have a couple buddies, and we got connected, and we thought, wouldn't it be fun, like for the fans, if we did like an Up Up Down Down Uno deck, and then we could like put it in the content, and through a series of crazy things, because of people leaving and staying at the company, we end up doing the product, which was incredible, And then we released the product, and then they did a live Uno game, and they showed the product, and the fans went nuts, and everyone was happy. But it ended up being like the last time those 4 guys could do that thing, because one of the guys is no longer with the company. So it became this like kind of galvanizing moment for the fan community. And now, as all I'm seeing on Twitter and Instagram, which is making me very happy, are pictures of people receiving their Uno decks, talking about how cool it was to have this like souvenir for watching a year and a half of this incredible type of content that these 4 guys put together and built themselves. And it was like really cool just to be kind of like part of that story, because we didn't have to do it's not that hard.
Right.
It's like we were just the vehicle, the canvas to like let them tell their story. And it was like just such a cool thing. And that's why like Uno works and matters to people, because like people play Uno all over the world, and like friends play Uno. Like this represents this group of friends. And it was cool. I'm glad Cesaro wanted to make an Uno deck. Like it's rad.
But
so,
that's, you know, again, that's sort of like the Matsaki thing. That's very organic and very natural how that came together. And sometimes that's how it happens, right?
Right.
That's sometimes
100%.
just, you know, but it's also kudos to you for seeing the opportunity, but also being able to champion that internally, to be able to be like, hey, look, here's an opportunity for us. How can we leverage it? Because sometimes that's the bigger challenge, is like you can have this crazy idea,
right?
And internally they're like, I don't know, I'm not so sure.
And that's the point, right, Marty? That's the
Yeah.
point. When you were saying like, how do you analyze what to do? Sometimes
Yeah.
you have a plan, and then like plans, some things present themselves and some things they adjust. But like sometimes these things kind of happen in the world, and you're like, oh, let's do that. That's already happening. Like I don't have to create that. Like when we did Herschel Hot Wheels collaboration, because the Land Rover, it was awesome, because it was Herschel's anniversary. They're known for this Land Rover Defender. They're very in line with our Hot Wheels, you know, kind of like car culture and the spirit of Hot Wheels. Like these are the great stories to tell, right? Where you can actually extend outside and have cool backpacks and cool gear, and it fits the Hot Wheels, and the Hot Wheels Defender matches the car of the owner. I mean, we're just like, that's the fun stuff.
Yeah,
super
super
hard to do, but like that's where you're like, oh, this is just awesome.
Yeah, no, that's great. And actually, again, you know, you couldn't have teed it up any better. And it's a good thing we rehearsed this beforehand.
We really did.
But, you know, the thing that you talked about that I thought was really interesting about all these different franchises and products is that you're trying to connect with so many different generations.
That's right.
Depending on the partnership or the franchise and what you call the multi-generational market. But I think what was really interesting is that outside there's, you know, it makes sense with certain multi-generational markets, but there were some that were really just not obvious. Can you talk a little bit about those? Because I thought that was really interesting.
I'm trying to figure out what you're talking about. What you're being coy.
The kidults.
Oh, the kidults. Yes. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, no
Marty.
worries. Of course, I'm here for you. I'm here for you.
We're family at this point.
Exactly.
The multi-generational part's important, right? And I think that's one of the benefits of working at Mattel, is we have these incredible franchises that are multi-generational in scope, right? That like fans of all ages love these things. You think about Uno, Barbie, Hot Wheels, Master Universe, right? They have legacy, but they're also like, there's young and old, and all types of folks that enjoy it. So it allows you an opportunity to kind of tell stories to different segments of customers or whatever. But what's interesting on the kidult side is Mattel has been focusing on this channel called Mattel Creations that Jenny Kim is driving along with Richard and Dixon and everybody else. But it's this idea that there's this kind of collector kidult customer, right? That sometimes Mattel wasn't always catering to. And so that's where a lot of this stuff actually lives. And I'm so glad you mentioned that. But like, you know, like if we're, you know, we did Bape, which is a cool streetwear brand that I'm sure your son is aware of, and Uno on Monday, and we can put it on Mattel Creations, tell an incredible brand story, give a lot of great editorial content, give it a great home, and then sell stuff. And it like, we'll sell stuff in like, so that's sold out in 2 minutes. But it's like, it can be our hype site, but also kind of like the place where you can have creative conversations about kind of design and how creative meets creative, and how you can make something really interesting that I think people like. And we talk about the idea of the kidult, because there's this like hypebeast kind of kidult customer who is buying stuff that may be a little more scarce, often more scarce, a little bit more expensive, a little bit more artsy, a little
They're
bit
more
more
collectible,
avant-garde.
kind of unique.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
allows us to kind of be more creative and take a risk that's a little less, like a little mitigated, rather than having to hope that like everybody at Walmart will like this very maybe avant-garde idea. It's the wrong home for it. But like Mattel Creations is a great place to kind of highlight all the cool stuff we can do with our brands, but also these really cool brand stories and creative products that, like, I mean, they're coming up with, they have RC, Tesla, Hot Wheels gimmicks, and like Shogun skull. I mean, like, I'm trying to get my hands on this. I'm actually getting up at 9 a.m. and buying this stuff myself sometimes. It's incredible though. It's beautiful that they, I mean, that's the thing, you know, I keep saying this, but like, Mattel's a cool toy company. Like sometimes it's okay. It's like really cool to be at a toy company. These are those moments where you're like, we can make awesome stuff. Like Ethan Woods, like this incredible designer, and I get to work with him and like be like, wouldn't it be cool if, and he can like make it. It's pretty cool.
but you guys are redefining what a toy company is now
Right.
in today's marketplace that could have gone a different direction, right? It could have gone, you could have just kept doing what you were doing, you know, relying on the existing franchises, the Barbies, the, you know, the Hot Wheels of the world, without really taking it to that next level and being more culturally, you know, relevant in today's marketplace, which is really what you guys have done. Is just taking that to that next level of embedding it into society based on what consumers are looking for, as opposed to trying to force what you wanted your brand to be on them.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of playing in the pop space. I mean, Barbie and Hot Wheels and Uno. I mean, Barbie's the #1 toy in the world. What they're doing is incredible. Like that team, I mean, and Hot Wheels is like, they're the #1 toy as well, sort of by volume. It's like whatever the stat is, like they're those two are incredible and they're growing. They keep growing in what they do, and it's just it's wild. And then you have Uno, which is like the top game in the world, like the #1 game in the entire world. So like they're doing all the, by them doing what they're doing allows us to kind of be over here like tinkering on how can we also do like amplify that and tell other stories, because without them really driving a lot of the business, we wouldn't be able to mess around with some of this other stuff, you know. And by the way, I mean, I was gonna say, I hope you notice I haven't sworn yet. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, no, thank you.
I wrote that down.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Although Patrick in the last session, I did hear a swear word.
He's allowed though. You told me not to curse. You told me not to curse. So I wrote it down on a sheet of
no F-bombs, please.
No F-bombs.
It's a family environment.
I almost just did it. That's why I mentioned it. I was so excited.
When you guys started doing these partnerships, you were doing like 2 to 3 per year, which at the time was like a huge deal because there was so much going on. We were stoked, right? Exactly. Tell everybody now how many projects you have in the pipe and that you're currently working on simultaneously.
It's somewhere. I mean, we just had 3 come out, but it was 20. I think it was last week. It was around 20.
That's crazy. 20
is wild. So it's a lot. It's a lot.
And how big is the department grown?
Zero. So, but that's not a conversation we should be having in public. I mean, like, I'm
just curious.
I'm joking. I'm messing with you. I'm saying that like the part I think what happened is like, we were like, when did we had a focus on it, but then as you, like all good things,
yes,
you manifest it. And then like Field of Dreams style, they show up and then you're like, oh great, I gotta have a baseball game. And then you got to do it. And it's great that we get the opportunity, but like, yeah, I mean, to your point, Marty, we had like 2 or 3 little things. We got a lot of things and a lot of them are big things. And but no, we have not scaled in the same way I think that we could.
Well, yeah, that's what I was curious. Is like, I mean, you know, is it just the 2 of you now, or I mean,
so there's a larger franchise team. We don't do all the brands, right? But just for our lines of business, it's the 2 of us, along with helpers from other, like, you know, our consumer products partners and some franchise creative folks who are incredible and keep us afloat, and other team social. But yes, from a day-to-day project management, deal making, I mean, you know, we have our friends in legal, everybody else, but like, yes, there's 2 of us. I love how you
said that, our friends in legal.
Daria is my friend. But I mean, I think the point is that no, I mean, we have 2 people. We are I say we are the get stuff done crew, me and Emily.
Yes. Yes.
But I swore when I told you that last time.
Yes.
We get stuff done, and
That,
I think that's if you're in my former life when I worked at Getty and Wire, we could, if you were running a Sundance and doing, if you're in charge of an event like Sundance, you may have a couple hundred things happening simultaneously. So I got really good at
multitasking
and
Yeah.
organizing and project management. Now you can't spend all day blocking and tackling because then you wouldn't have time to do everything else. But I think that understanding of ability to like just do it
Yep.
Was helpful. And then having someone really good, like, I mean, I bring her up because like but like having a person like Emily Chow on my team who can keep the trains on time is like super important. Because if it wasn't for like our ability to work together and like make things happen, it wouldn't get done.
And you talked about all these different stakeholders that you're dealing with, and it really, there's certainly a core of stakeholders. You mentioned legal and franchise and creative and so forth. But
and the toy teams, right? Like the toy team itself is a stakeholder, obviously.
Yeah. So there's just a number of different stakeholders that have to be involved and have their input. And it gets back to what we talked about earlier of managing all of those different personalities, trying to get a deal done. And then you've got the whole other side and everybody on their team and the different stakeholders. So there's a lot of different stakeholders you're having to manage, both internally and externally.
Yeah, just support, right? So like not all this stuff is our like partnership and collaboration is a portion of what we do in general. It's a big portion, but I think that it takes a lot of time. But you deal with cross-functionals in every meeting. Mattel's a very cross-functional company. If you're a manufacturing company at heart, you have to be to get anything made. And then if you keep extending out these brands into other lines of business, you have to work with other people from different groups. And our job as franchise is to connect those dots so that people are speaking the same language. So that's every meeting all day. And we do our best at it. We don't always nail it, but we're here we try to support it and to keep driving the larger marketing goals to the end, and I think, and seeing the long term, right? Seeing that like 5-year picture and saying like, here's how if we can, try to walk in the same line so we can actually get to the successful ending.
That brings one of the quick things that we didn't talk about, but I'm kind of curious as we're talking now is like, when you mentioned that you're working with the toy division, right? And actually manufacturing, how does that, like, how much lead time do they need to actually, take your crazy idea and put it together into something? I mean,
they're not taking my idea. They have their own people with better ideas. But like, a toy calendar is a year and a half or so. And then you have a consumer products calendar, which is a year and a half to 2 years. So like all the different teams are doing some stuff. I think the idea is that like, we're all working with the same information.
Timeline. Got it.
So like if we have the approved style guides or approved images or assets, or we're all working towards the same stories and priorities. But like by no means, the Monster High folks don't need me to do anything. Those folks are incredibly talented, and I would just be getting in the way. I'm just lucky if I get to give a note. There you
go. Well, I think we're getting up to time. I figured I'd check in with anybody if they have any questions for Andrew. Please feel free to use the Q&A button there. But in the meantime, while we get some questions coming in, here comes one. What are the 2 coolest, most rewarding partnerships you've done? Or even just the coolest. What's been the coolest, most rewarding partnership you've done?
I think the Matsaki one was like, I felt like I could retire. I have one coming out.
Okay. That you probably can't talk about. Okay.
But if you give us a few weeks,
we'll come back and revisit.
I think if we do this again in like a few weeks or months, I think that one's the coolest one we've done.
The one you're working on that you can't talk about?
The one that's going to be coming out soon that I can't talk about, which is a horrible answer. But
no, did it come together organically similar to the Matsaki one, or was it a more, no, not at all. Can you talk about
it was authentic. It's 100% authentic.
Yeah.
But it was one of the hardest ones. It took a lot of pushing and it takes a lot of, it took a lot of people working together to get it done.
Got it.
But when I can't talk about, but it is 100% authentic, and it is just like the Matsaki story, where it is ripped right from real life. But it is the most rewarding, and I think it's the coolest one that I've done. But I that's all I can say. But beyond that, I think Matsaki to me feels like a huge accomplishment. Bape was a cool one that came out on Monday because it took us 2 years to do. You know, so it was rewarding to get it to be done, to get it done, and it was great. I thought I think the up down down Uno thing is just the coolest story. And this is the music when they talk you off the Oscars.
Right, exactly. But we do have the one last question, and that was, Ryan, just hold on 1 second. What was the most valuable quote, advice you received?
Yeah,
and shared
Janet
with
Sue,
me about time and deals.
I will. So Janet Sue, who used to run franchise, I guess at one point she used to have this on her door, but she said, "Time kills all deals." And what that means is, like, if you waste time or if you let time happen and you lose momentum, that's like kryptonite. So I think she meant it kind of to light a fire, but it's also like, I've found that time has killed all of our, like, the ones that we needed. If we couldn't get a hold, you know, if you start losing contact and communication and speed and momentum, it's over.
Yeah, and you talked about momentum. Momentum is the one thing that you need to really continue to get the deals going.
Yeah, energy, because it takes a lot of work to do
right.
this. So if you got to make sure it's a priority.
Fantastic. Well, Ryan, I know you're here to pull us off at the end of the day, but Andrew, thank you so much for your time today and your insights.
No, thanks for having me.
It was great, and thank you to Brand Innovators for having Andrew and I today. And we'll let you go from there.
Andrew, Marty, appreciate your time. Really do. Thank you for sticking with us and closing out our event. So thank you very much. And to all of our speakers through the day and our listeners at home, want to just give a huge shout out for sticking with us and being here today on this Tuesday afternoon, morning, or even evening, as we learned that some of our guests were out over in Europe. It's very cool to see that we are having such a large impact all across the states and into other nations as well. So thank you, everybody. We're going to be continuing our live cast series next week on October 6th. That theme will be creative transformation. We hope to see you there. You can check out our website to see all the upcoming live casts that we have for the month of October. And if you're interested in speaking in any way, shape, or form, feel free to reach out to our team and ask us how you can get involved. Thank you, everybody. Have a terrific day, and we'll see you at the next one.
Thanks, everyone. Bye, Andrew.
Bye. Thanks.